offices in Delhi and Mumbai. Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar drew the line. He cautioned against what he called doctored narratives and said that dumping of information was another way of invasion.
Sinister designs are there to set afloat a narrative by free fall of information. We have to be alert. This is another way of invasion. We have to boldly neutralize it.
Thankar's remarks come after income tax officials surveyed the offices of BBC for 2 straight days. The IT department has alleged that BBC didn't comply with transfer pricing norms and diverted profit. The tax department's surveys come weeks after the BBC aired a 2-part documentary on Prime Minister Modi and the 2002 Gujarat riots. The documentary triggered massive controversy in the country and was banned from online platforms by the government. Meanwhile, the opposition has accused the government of hounding those who speak the truth.
Hypocrisy, even a small writer put up for Modi ji, and when the right things or truth is revealed, then they say that it's anti-national.
So is there any truth to the Vice President's claims of doctored narratives? Is politics driving propaganda?
All right, let me open this up to our guests who are joining us at the top of Brass Tacks. Ishkaran Bhandari is a lawyer and political analyst. Ashok Sajanhar is a former diplomat, also one of the signatories against this BBC documentary. Dr. Shama Mohammed of the Congress will be joining us, and Neerja Chaudhary, senior journalist, will also be joining us on the broadcast. Ashok Sajanhar, let me ask you this. You know, when the documentary came, and of course, a lot of people had issues with it, including you. A lot of people signed against it and so on. But the story had pretty much gone off the radar. It had gone off the front pages. It had gone off the primetime debates on television until the raids happened on Tuesday. The question is, isn't it counterproductive, even politically speaking, for the government to be keeping this issue alive?
You know, Zakka, one might think of it that way, that it would be counterproductive because the story had died down. But, you know, people who've been saying it, number one, it was biased, it was, peddling inaccurate information, it was non-serious journalism, etc. And people have also been questioning the timing of the documentary as to why did it have to come out at this time, after 20 years of the incident, and just a year before the general elections are going to be held. So I don't think that this is going to be the last attempt at trying to sort of, have an impact on the internal affairs of the country. The country goes through 9 state elections this year, another general election. So I think it is motivated. The timing of that is very, very suspect. So I'm certain that this is not the last that we've heard of such an attempt. It might be from the BBC this has been done, but there would be so many other agencies. And I think it's better that we have a clear idea that there are such elements, such inimical, hostile elements around the world, which will try to sort of, both in terms of trying to interfere in the domestic affairs, as also what the Honorable Vice President said, to derail the India growth story, because basically all this, what it tries to do as far as the world is concerned, is that India is not a good place. There's no sort of, stability, there's no peace, there's no tranquility. It is, the conditions are not good. We shouldn't be going there. No investments should be taking. And this is India's time, really, when the economy is doing well, when it has dealt with all the challenges very creditably. It is the chair of the G20 and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So I think these attempts are damaging, are harmful.
So let me ask Ishkaran Bhandari, the Vice President says that this is a doctored narrative. It is in keeping with trying some nefarious elements trying to derail the India growth story. Call it coincidence, but on the day that the BBC raids happened, India also happened to sign, though it was a private deal. The fact is that Air India signed the biggest deal in aviation history. Now, what should have been the dominant story for that night and the next morning's newspapers, it got, completely, the space got taken away by the BBC raid story. So, again, the question that's being asked is, who is derailing the India growth story? Isn't the BBC raid more detrimental to derailing the India story as opposed to what the Vice President characterized as a doctored narrative?
Here, where the president of US says we are creating 1 million jobs in US, where the French president says thank you Narendra Modi and for reposing confidence in France, or where the UK prime minister says association with India is going to benefit us. So that story is clear. On BBC now, I have been on your debate and I have not been in favor of a ban or a blocking in this case because that has a Streisand effect. Anything you ban or block in social media gets more views, more publicity. That has been documented over the last 20 years. Every instance is proof of that. When we come to income tax, that's a slightly different issue. I believe because even under UPA government, BBC was being accused of evading taxes. And that's the same issue with Chinese firms also. If you are operating in India, making profits, but not paying taxes in India, should the government shut its eye because of timing? India is a land of constant elections. So anytime you take any action, the timing debate will rise. So that is a slightly separate issue. But politically, I think my view is it should not have been blocked. But BJP, it appears, seems to think there will be multiple such pieces by multiple such agencies. Could it be New York Times, could be BBC, and they want to take it head on and send a message to their voters that this is a regime change information war going on. Otherwise, to keep on taking it head on only keeps the information in news.
Okay, so let me ask Neerja Chaudhary this. So is this part of a well thought out strategy by the government that, look, we expect such quote unquote, as government sources themselves call it, hit jobs, whether the BBC documentary or otherwise, they're expecting such hit jobs in the run-up to G20. This is a big year for India. India is hosting the biggest economies in the world and so on and so forth. It's like a, for want of a better phrase, like a coming out party. So India and the Indian government is expecting such hit jobs. By going after the first such quote-unquote hit job, the first one in the run-up to the G20, is the government of India sending out a message to other potential folks who would want to indulge in a hit job that, look, there will be a price to pay, that there will be consequences to face? Is that the thinking that, look, we will engage with the foreign media, but it's going to be on terms that the government is going to set?
I think, number one, I don't think this government does anything off the cuff. I think they make calculated moves and they keep the political fallout very much in mind. So I'm not one of those who subscribe to the view that they've done it out of pique or anger. Even if there's pique and anger, they will choose that time. Point number two, yes, it's possible. It is probably likely that it is a message to international media, apni auqat mein raho, and also to the domestic media, that we're not going to take this lying down. But you know what I find peculiar and curious, that you are on the one hand doing a raid on BBC, whatever comes out of it, and they are saying we are cooperating. They've not gone on the offensive. So let that come out. We don't know whether whatever is going to come out of that. But at the same time, you are concluding a deal with France and the US, to buy the largest deal in aviation history.
Yeah.
You are showing that India has arrived on the world scene. We are a power of the future. You'll have to deal with India just as you're going to deal with China. And it's a democratic India, the mother of democracy India, that you're going to be dealing with.
Okay.
And Biden saying 1 million jobs. That India, it's one thing, what the BJP people used to say in the past, the rhetoric would be, let the law take its course. Our people have gone, they're looking at things, let the law take its course. Today, that is not the rhetoric. Rhetoric is, if you're speaking against us, you are anti-India, you are anti-national. So that for a country which is confident and wants to come across as confident, to be cornered by a media house, and to retaliate in that fashion, I find this a little curious.
Okay, so let me ask Dr. Shama Mohammed, as Neerja Chaudhary said, this government always politically calculates the fallout of any action or the message that it sends, but be that as it may, the government is saying, how is this any more different than what Mrs. Gandhi did in 1970. Apparently, there were documentaries that the BBC did, which, according to her and her government at that time, did not show India in good light, and therefore she banned the BBC. Again, in 1975, BBC journalists were banned from India. Again, Mrs. Gandhi was in power. In 2009, when the UPA was in power, a similar tax evasion notice was sent to the BBC. So, how is this action today by this government any more different from what the Congress did in the past?
Okay, Zakka, a couple of points. First and foremost, I fail to understand why everything is compared of this particular party or this particular government to 2004, to when Mrs. Indira Gandhi was in power. We have to understand when Mrs. Gandhi was in power, we were just becoming a democracy, a new democracy. Things were different. All right. Now we are a mature democracy. Let's understand that. And on top of that,
what do you mean by we were just becoming a democracy? I thought we were a democracy from 1947.
I said matured democracy. Maybe you have a hearing problem. It's matured democracy right now.
Okay,
right?
We were not a mature democracy when Mrs. Gandhi was in power. Okay, go on.
I'm saying it's a democracy then, it's a democracy now, but it's a more mature democracy. There were a lot of issues when Mrs. Gandhi took over with the country so diverse. I mean, she had to do certain steps because of those days, what was happening. Now, what I'm trying to tell you here is, I remember when Mr. Modi came to power in a very nice manner. I'm not looking at it as somebody who wants to scold or pick a point here, is that we are a party with a difference. If you are a party with a difference, why do you compare everything to what the Congress did or the Congress did not do? Show what you are to the world. One. Number two,
no, Shama, I think the reason why, can I get 10 seconds? The reason why this government says, by the way, the Congress also did this, is to show that it's double standards when the Congress attacks this government for going after BBC or any other Western media, because this government is turning around and saying that, look, how is this any more different from what the Congress did? I mean, it's a question of double standards.
Zakka, I'm again going to tell you, my dearest friend, that you should give me to speak. Then only you can understand what I'm trying to come up to. You don't have to jump the gun. So let me speak, for heaven's sake. Now, what I'm trying to say is that what's the difference is that we have to understand when they went in there with the BBC office, the reason was transfer pricing and diversion of profits. So where do they go? To the finance department. But where did they go? They went and questioned journalists. This is basically to intimidate the journalists, because there is a kind of, you talked about BBC. Now, let me tell you, in 2000, there was a CBI raid of news laundry in 2021. NDTV in 2017, ED raid of NewsClick, IT search of Dainik Bhaskar. Then we know the Center of Policy Research also was searched. Now, what is the common thing in all of them is that they all published content critical of this present government. It is all, any news channel, any portal which publishes critical content is after that there is the raid. Never before, not like there has been some issue. Now, what we have seen here is
Dr.
after
Shama
the
Mohammed,
BBC
with all
documentary
due
came out,
respect,
there is a raid.
Dr. Shama Mohammed, with all due respect, look, I don't hold a brief for other media organizations or the media at large, but the fact that you and I and other panelists, Mr. Sajjanhar, Mr. Bhandari, Ms. Chaudhary, are having a 9 p.m. debate freely on this channel, and I'm sure this is the debate, the lead story across channels, that should go to some extent to say that, it's not like we're brushing all of this under the carpet. It's not like we can't have this discussion, right? It's not like this is being scrubbed off the headlines.
You are having a discussion, my dear Zakka, but CNN is not always putting content again, what is critical of the government. There are a lot of things during our time, during it to UPA time, so many things critical of us. I remember policy paralysis, corruption allegations, which were never proved. So many things. The thing is, during our time, the difference is, we didn't, of course, capture the media. And always when there were allegations, we would ask the minister or the chief minister to resign, and there would be an impartial CBI or whatever investigation. Now here, BBC documentary, whatever it's said and done is already there. They could come out and do a press conference, the BJP spokespersons, whoever's supporting the BP, and say, listen, this is a Supreme Court has given a clean chit, this so and so, so and so. And give a press conference. But why do you ban it under, you don't allow it to go ahead? You don't, all YouTube channels should not show it. The IT Emergency Act of 2021 comes into play.
So,
let the media show, come out into a press conference and show your points. And this is the reasons we do not want this particular
I agree, and I think Ishkaran also made that point.
That's
that
what I'm trying to say.
there is the Barbara Streisand effect. You try to ban something, more and more people, their attention is actually diverted to it. But let me come to the larger point, Ashok Sajanhar. At a time when India is hosting the G20 and you're the mother of democracy, fastest growing large economy in the world, there is a phrase called Badappan or Bada Dil. I mean, you can't be going after all and sundry, all of these small little attacks and then, bring the roof down for every little hit job, quote unquote, against you. Is the government missing a trick or two by not taking the 30,000 feet view on these quote unquote hit jobs?
I think, Zakka, the government is not only, in my view, meaning I, again, also like you don't have a brief for others, I don't have a brief for the government. But what I think is that the government in this case is taking a 60,000 feet view. The reason for this is, it's not going against a hit job or a hatchet job that has been done by the BBC. I think there was a very serious concern that, if the BBC documentaries are not banned, then it is going to lead to, law and order issues. It's, if it is going to inflame passions, an issue that had been settled, that had been put behind us, that is again going to inflame passions, and there are going to be law and order problems. We have seen, Zakka, that fictitious and motivated, agenda of this nature. Even in 2020, we had these riots. So I think if this documentary was shown otherwise, freely shown otherwise, it could have really resulted in that. Okay. And I think that was the bigger reason, irrespective of what, the Congress, again, it's my view, irrespective of what the Congress might have done or not done in the past. But here, I think point by point, the government had come out. In our letter, we had also come out that this was highly, it was a propaganda material. It was highly biased. It was not factually accurate. If there are people in my country who are saying that BBC comes out with the truth and that is why the government is afraid of it. The truth is what the Supreme Court has come out with.
No, on that point, I agree. I mean, if there's a Supreme Court appointed SIT, an appeal that the Supreme Court has gone into and come to its that conclusion, then to have something 20 years later questioning that, I'm not sure that particularly makes sense. But I want to come back to, the tax raids, and I want to ask Ishkaran Bhandari this. Again, what is being said about the tax raids is, okay, you have, and I think Shama made this point, if the BBC, and surely no one, no organization, no individual in this country is above the law of the land. So let's assume what the government is saying is true, that the BBC did violate tax provisions in this country, and it did siphon off profits, or it did not pay adequate taxes on those profits. Why would you, have this kind of a survey knocking on their doors in central Delhi? Journalists there, their phones and laptops being confiscated, etc. I mean, surely they have nothing to do with tax evasion.
Zakka, before I come on that, though ideally it's for BJP to answer, one short point on Indian democracy. To say that India was not a mature democracy in 1970s, I think is a very patronizing and unfair statement. And the proof of the pudding is when emergency was imposed, democracy was tried to be throttled. The voters were mature enough to wipe out the people who brought emergency, including the Prime Minister from her own seat. That is the most maturity you can see in any democratic setup anywhere in the world. So let us not do that. But now coming on to this issue of BBC raids, I started by telling you that blocking of BBC, I don't think so was a good move. They should have ignored it. But these raids, these are economic issues. And in that BBC, the person which is being surveyed, the institution which is being surveyed is not taking a stand. It is saying that we are cooperating and we will deal with it. So I don't think so anybody should jump ahead of the person which is undergoing the scrutiny because they know best. And that again happened.
No, but Ishkaran, sorry I'm interrupting. I mean, you're a lawyer and I want you to clear this for our viewers. But isn't that a standard stock response advice from any lawyer of any client. You know, don't join issue. Just say that we are cooperating and we will allow the law to take its own course. So why should we believe that this was not advised to the BBC by its lawyers? I mean, it looks like a standard lawyer template answer, statement.
Zakka, but that's what I'm saying. Both ways. It is for BJP to justify the raid or for BBC to challenge it in courts. None of us have enough information to know what BBC was doing. So we are all going to speculate whether this raid was justified or not. The best way to know it is when the court proceedings occur, because the courts will decide that.
Okay. So Nirja Chaudhary, coming back to what the political fallout of this may or may not be, I find it hard to believe that this is a vote determining issue. Frankly, for the average Joe on the street, of course, we here in the press can make a big deal out of this story. But for the average voter, is this an issue that moves the needle? I mean, is this an issue that could help/hurt the BJP in the upcoming state elections or in the run-up to 2024?
Yes, it exercises intelligentsia sections of the middle class, but I think the man on the street, I don't know. I don't think so. I may be wrong. But 2-3 quick points I want to make in response to your panelists. One is that, we have to learn from the past. We talked about Indira Gandhi. Indira Gandhi used also the foreign hand. Being responsible for criticism of her regime. She also postponed elections twice. So I think then she realized the limitations of that, went for elections, lost, and then came back with a bang. Secondly, the point is that if with G20 summit that India is going to host in September, and if you have raids on a newsroom of a media house that's made a critical documentary, the signal is of intolerance.
No, but the government is saying that don't link it to the documentary. They're saying the documentary has nothing to do with the raids. The raids is on a tax matter.
That's it.
You don't buy that.
The timing of it, whatever be the substance of it, the timing and the perception is that. And remember, out of 20, probably 15 countries that are going to come are going to be liberal Western kind of democracies.
Okay.
So I think the question that will it help them politically or hurt them? I think in the larger context, it may not, India will remain a market, these countries will decide from self-interest, but that little bit, you lose out on. And therefore, I ask myself, has the government done a self-goal? Could this have been really avoided?
So let me ask Dr. Shama Mohammed, I think the final part of what Nirja Chaudhary said, that look, on the same day, and I think it's not lost on everyone around the world, that on the very same day that the raids happened, India signed this mammoth Maharaja of a deal to buy 470 Airbus and Boeing aircraft. And you had Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron and Rishi Sunak all singing praises of India. So basically the message that's going out to the world is that, look, India is a big market and the West has no choice but to deal with India, BBC or no BBC. I mean, none of them, not even the British Prime Minister has said anything official about the BBC yet, except, of course, when he said in Parliament on day one that he doesn't agree with the characterization of India's Prime Minister in that documentary. After that, it's all been praises for India as a market and India as a partner.
Yeah, so that is right. India is buying. Let's understand that. And that is not more of India. It's Tata's. Basically, now it's a private airline, Air India. So the Tatas are buying it. But what we want is investment in this country. Do you not want private investment? That gives jobs. But private investors are going to come out and say, you know what, we don't want to be in a country which is not, where democratically, they don't uphold democratic values. See, whatever said and done about the US, let's understand during the time of Trump and even George Bush, I remember a director particular making a lot of movies and documentaries on George Bush, about 9/11, about everything possible, about the invasion in Iraq and everything. But nobody stopped him. There is something called the fourth pillar, which is completely independent. Number two, to Ashok Ji, he spoke about 2020. Ashok Ji, I want to ask, why did that happen in Delhi, a riot, when the President of the United States was there? Is Amit Shah such a weak home minister that he didn't have intelligence on what was going to happen? He is the home minister. He's sitting in Delhi. The police are under him. Why did he not stop? He would have surely known. And the riots did not happen for one day. Or I still remember it started Sunday evening. On Monday, he could have called the army in. He did not. And it went on for 2 more days. And that was a shameful moment for India.
Okay, but Shama, I want to come back. I want to come back to the point that you
So
made.
Shama,
10 seconds, 10 seconds. I want to come back to the point that you made, that investors will be wary of coming to a country where, there are all of these issues, curbing of the freedom of the press and so on. Please name me one investor who doesn't want to come to India because of this. It's not like the Googles or the Apples or the Facebooks are saying we're not going to invest in India because of all of these issues.
The Apples and the Googles can sit there. I'm talking about infrastructure. I'm talking about the various other retails. There are so many other things.
Who is not coming to India? Name me one large investor not coming to India because of the reasons you cited.
90,000 crores have been removed last year from India. I mean, everybody knows private. That's why the government has come up with capex, because private investment is very less in India.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, investors, whether they are foreign or domestic, are going to see their return on profits, return on investments, and if there are return on investments coming from India, they will come. So I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do agree on one point, and I'll give the closing comment both to Mr. Sajanhar as well as to Ishkaran after this. Mr. Sajanhar, I keep coming back to this point. I mean, this is like, for want of a better comparison, right? When China rises in the world and it hosts the Beijing Olympics and it does all these multi-billion-dollar deals, biggest trading country in the world, and so on and so forth, yet at the same time, they can afford to go after the Uyghurs and go after the Tibetans because it's not a democracy. India, though, can't play by those same rules. Or is that the message that the government is trying to send, that if we are a big market, companies want to come to us, foreign investors want to come to us, countries want to do business with us and engage with us, then it's going to be on our terms?
Okay, a very quick two comments. First, if you permit, Zakka, I'll very quickly respond to Dr. Shama Muhammad also. She said what happened in 2020. And the cause for that, I will say, is fake propaganda. And again, this BBC documentary also was fake propaganda. And I think that is what the government must have been concerned and worried about, that if it is not banned, it is going to lead to something
How can 2020 be fake propaganda?
All right, Shama, please let him finish. I'm also running out of time, so I need to wrap
I didn't interrupt you. You see, if you think that either I or the people who are listening to this debate, that they would think, that they would consider that the government of the day in February 2020 agreed, when Donald Trump is on our land, on our territory, that they willingly, willfully, they orchestrated these communal riots. I think no one is going to believe that. And I think it lacks credibility. If you want me to believe that somehow the government in...
all right, I am completely out of time. My apologies to all the other panelists, Ishkaran as well, because I need to go to this piece of breaking news. So thank you very much. This piece of breaking news coming in, it's an important one. Related to cricket, it's a possible solution to the logjam around the Asia Cup, which is coming up later this year. Pakistan may continue to remain the host, and India could be given the offer of playing its matches in the UAE, where some of these games could be held, including, of course, an India-Pakistan game, if such a scenario were to ever arise. Also, the UAE could possibly host the final if India were to qualify for it. So let me go across to Shivani, who has more details on this. So what gives, Shivani? Because I remember when Ramiz Raja was the head of the board, he was all, fire and brimstone, saying that if India is not going to come to Pakistan, then Pakistan will not come to India for the One-Day World Cup. So what gives?
Well, that board led by Ramiz Raza, first of all, is not in charge of PCB anymore. PCB is currently being helmed by Najam Sethi. But eventually, I think there will be a realization in Pakistan board that they obviously cannot fight this battle with the BCCI. So the best option for them would be to continue to remain host. And I think their priority is, with this report that is coming out of Pakistan, that at least some of the matches happen in Pakistan. If need be, India can be given the offer to hold its matches in the UAE. And of course, if India qualify for the final, then the final will be scheduled in UAE. Although it will be a little bit tricky, I don't think this has ever happened before, certainly not for the Asia Cup, because there are very few teams that play the Asia Cup. And for expecting every team to fly in and out of Pakistan and UAE for their matches in Pakistan and then the match with India, I think it's going to be a very, very problematic situation. It remains to be seen if the Asian Cricket Council actually agrees to it, It met earlier this month and discussed the scheduling of the Asia Cup. It's set to meet again in March, where a possible final solution could be met. I think the Pakistan board's priority will be that they don't want to lose the entire tournament and shift it out of Pakistan. Whether some midway can be found, as is being suggested via sources, remains to be seen, Zakka.
So I'm also curious to know, could there be some kind of a quid pro quo, or will Pakistan ask for a quid pro quo where, okay, we agree to this arrangement for the Asia Cup, India can play its matches in the UAE, but extend us the same courtesy for the one-day World Cup. Pakistan will not travel to India. Pakistan plays all its games in the UAE.
No, Zakka, I really don't think that can be worked out. First of all, the Asia Cup is with the Asian Cricket Council. They can work it out between themselves. The World Cup goes, World Cup is a much bigger property and it has all the teams around the world, not just Asian teams. And I don't think the ICC and all others will agree to a solution like this. Besides, Pakistan's issue is not to come to India and play. That is particularly India's issue, that they don't go to Pakistan since 2008. Pakistan has per se not refused coming to India. When Ramiz Raza, for example, made that statement that they will also not come for the one day, it was more a tit for tat. It wasn't really a precondition for them. And even at that time, when in October, for example, Jay Shah, who's the Asian Cricket Council head, had said that India will not go to Pakistan and we'll have to work out some other solution. Even at that time, we knew when Ramiz Raza made that threat that that's not going to be possible for Pakistan. Skipping a World Cup is not a very easy deal in world cricket.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Shivani Gupta, many thanks for joining us with that breaking story, a significant one in the world of cricket, and has ramifications beyond the world of cricket as well. Talking about stories that have ramifications, the Navy Chief of India has flagged off a grave concern, the fact that India urgently needs to amp up its presence in the Indian Ocean region. He says there is far too much Chinese activity in the IOR and India needs to get its act together. We will get into the merits and demerits of what is fast becoming the latest theatre in the Indo-China great power rivalry. But first, what the Navy Chief said.
There are Chinese naval ships also operating, there are Chinese warships, there are Chinese research vessels, Chinese fishing boats in large numbers.
All right, first let's get you that exclusive interview with the Navy Chief, Admiral R. Hari Kumar, on the threat of the Chinese Navy in the Indian Ocean region.
We as a resident naval power in this region, we keep track of all the activities that are happening. There are Chinese naval ships also operating, there are Chinese warships, there are Chinese research vessels, Chinese fishing boats in large numbers. And the prosperity at sea is dependent upon peace, tranquility, our ability to use the oceans in a free, open and in compliance with the rule of law and so on. So that is what we try to achieve, and it is something which cannot be achieved just by one navy alone. It has to be done in cooperation and collaboration as well as coordination with all the navies in the region.
So the presence of China's People's Liberation Army Navy in the Indian Ocean has been growing steadily. The deployment of submarines along with survey and hydrographic ships has become a regular feature since 2017. That's when the PLAN top naval survey ship, the Type 636A hydrographic survey ship, was surveying the waters off the coast of the Indian Ocean. In 2018, the PLAN's modern Type 625C Xi'an 3 oceanographic survey ship surveyed the Makran Trench, this is in the Persian Gulf. That same year, the Xiangyang Hong 10 was deployed in the Indian Ocean region. Since 2019, Chinese survey ships like the Xiangyang Hong 3 have surveyed the deep waters of the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea. China has also deployed a fleet of underwater drones in the Indian Ocean region, which can be used for military applications to get better sonar performance of Chinese submarines, as well as to improve their detection capabilities. So how exactly do these Chinese submarines enter the Indian Ocean region? Typically, they use the Malacca, the Lombok or the Sunda Straits to reach the Indian Ocean. The Sunda Straits are very shallow, and the active presence of fishing vessels makes it rather difficult to navigate these waters. The Lombok Strait is deep enough for submarines to proceed in their normal mode of navigation. And when it comes to the Malacca Straits, of course, Chinese submarines have to navigate on the surface to ensure navigation safety. It is also the busiest trade route connecting Europe to Asia, so that is a factor as well. Now, incidents of Chinese spy vessels in Indian waters has become a routine affair in the last few years. In November last year, the Yuan Wang 6 had entered the Indian Ocean just days before India was to conduct a ballistic missile test from the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. In August of last year, the Yuan Wang 5 was spotted in the China-leased Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. This led to a direct spat between New Delhi and Colombo. The Yuan Wang class of ships are used to track satellites and intercontinental ballistic missile launches. In January of 2021, a Chinese survey ship named Shangyang Hong 3 was also seen operating in the Indian Ocean. Now, China has become more and more assertive about its national and maritime security interests in the Indian Ocean region. The deployment of such ships highlights scant Chinese respect for peace in international waters. China believes that it needs to keep a watch on the activities of India in the Indian Ocean because it is a major regional player in this part of the world as well. China thinks that its interests lie in protecting the geo-economic architecture created as a result of its Belt and Road Initiative, in which these sea lanes are important. The People's Liberation Army Navy is also known to patrol the Indian Ocean as part of Beijing's Far Seas protection strategy. Routine patrols are also undertaken on the pretext of anti-piracy missions. Now, no navy has grown as rapidly as the Chinese Navy in recent times. So how does India stack up against the PLA Navy? When it comes to number of personnel, the Indian Navy has a little over 140,000, whereas the Chinese have over 300,000. In terms of fleet strength, the Indian Navy has just a shade under 300 warships. China has more than 700. The Indian Navy has 18 submarines as of right now, whereas the Chinese Navy has more than 3 times that. When it comes to aircraft carriers, both navies have 2 each. The Indian Navy has 11 destroyers and the Chinese have 50. But it's not just India. China has been showing its high-handed behavior with other navies as well, and not just in the Indian Ocean region. In 2012, China took control of the Scarborough Shoal. That's a disputed territory claimed by both China and the Philippines. This was after a massive standoff with the Philippines Navy. In 2014, a Chinese oil rig was placed in waters claimed by Vietnam. It led to a confrontation between Chinese and Vietnamese fishing vessels. In 2016, a Chinese Coast Guard vessel rammed into a Vietnamese fishing boat in disputed waters, leading to protests from the Vietnamese government. In 2018, a Chinese naval ship entered Indonesian waters without permission, leading to a diplomatic protest. China has also increased its military presence around Taiwan, which it considers to be a renegade province. And joining me now is Professor Brahmachalani. He's a strategic affairs expert and also a very close China watcher. I want to first ask you about what the Navy chief said, and how would you compare the current state of equations when it comes to the Indian Ocean region between the Indian and Chinese navies? How can India qualitatively up its game in the IOR?
The Indian Ocean is a bridge between Asia and Europe. It's also the world's premier energy and trade seaway. And China's growing interest in the Indian Ocean draws strength from its aggressive expansionism in the adjacent South China Sea. In the South China Sea, China has redrawn the geopolitical map incrementally. And I think it's very important to look at the challenge that China is beginning to mount against India in the Indian Ocean in a historical context. China became India's neighbor only in 1950-51 by gobbling up the buffer Tibet. Now, even as Indian and Chinese forces remain locked in standoffs along the Himalayas, the growing emergence of a Chinese oceanic threat signifies a transformative change in India's security calculus. It's important to remember that Peninsular India has a vantage location in the Indian Ocean region. India is positioned dominantly astride vital sea lanes of communication. But despite India's inherent maritime leverage and advantage, its land frontier compulsions have instilled a landlocked mindset. In other words, India has a land-oriented defense strategy. Most of its defense budget goes to the army.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Indian Ocean, China is seeking to incrementally chip away at India's natural geographic advantage.
Well, it's not just India, is it? I mean, there are several other smaller countries, Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, with whom China has meddled around with. So when you talk about even something like the Quad, which is now a formal sort of coming together of 4 countries, it doesn't have any of these smaller countries or their navies. Why is it that we're not seeing, if not a coalition, at least a grouping of these smaller countries that are affected by China's high-handed behavior in the high seas, coming together to collectively take on this bully?
Because forming a coalition against China of this kind presents a formidable challenge, because first, the smaller countries are dissuaded from joining any anti-China coalition. And even the big powers, if you take the United States, Australia, they're not willing to join or form an openly anti-China coalition. In fact, the Quad, despite its maritime focus, is no longer really focused on the maritime challenges in the Indian Ocean region or in the larger Indo-Pacific region, because under Biden, the Quad increasingly has been saddled with a global agenda. It's if you look at the working groups that the Quad has established since last year, or in fact since 2021, since the time that Biden took office, the working groups are focused on climate change.
Correct.
Climate change, things like resilient supply chains, or other global issues. And given the fact that the Quad is only a 4-nation strategic coalition, it is in no position to deal with universal challenges. Its focus ought to be on the maritime challenges in the Indo-Pacific, but that original agenda has got diluted.
All right.
With global issues being taken on board.
Brahmacharani, we'll leave it at that. We'll see how the story plays out. For the moment, thank you very much for joining us on Brass Tacks. And our final story tonight, the Tipu Sultan versus Savarkar narrative has been brewing for a while now in Karnataka. But things went up a notch or two when State Minister Ashwath Narayan compared Siddaramaiah, the Congress leader and former Chief Minister and potentially could be the next Chief Minister, he compared Siddaramaiah to Tipu Sultan and said that the people of the state should quote-unquote kill Siddaramaiah like the way Tipu Sultan was killed.
The Tipu Sultan versus V.D. Savarkar campaign continues in poll-bound Karnataka. This time, State Minister Ashwath Narayan urging people to finish off Karnataka's present-day Tipu Sultan, Siddaramaiah.
Tipu beka, Savarkar beka. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಟಿಪ್ಪು ಸುಲ್ತಾನ್ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಕಳಿಸಬೇಕು? ಉರಿಗೌಡ ನಂಜೇಗೌಡ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು? ಉರಿಗೌಡ ನಂಜೇಗೌಡರು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು? ಹಂಗೆ ಇವ್ರನ್ನ ಹೊಡೆದಾಕ್ಬೇಕು.
Ashwath Narayan's remarks come days after state BJP President Nalin Katil said followers of Tipu Sultan should not be alive.
ದೇವರಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಾರ್ಥನೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೇನೆ, ಹೇ ದೇವ, ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೃಷ್ಣದೇವರಾಯನ ಆಡಳಿತ ಬರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಆದರೆ ಟಿಪ್ಪು ಸಂತಾನ ಹೋಗಬೇಕು, ಭಾರತೀಯ ಜನತಾ ಪಾರ್ಟಿ.
Former Karnataka Chief Minister and Congress strongman Siddaramaiah hit back at the BJP.
ಅಶ್ವಥ್ ನಾರಾಯಣ ಅಂತ ಮಾಜಿ ಸಿದ್ದರಾಮಯ್ಯ ಅವರನ್ನು ಟಿಪ್ಪು ಸುಲ್ತಾನ್ ರೀತಿ ಒಡೆದು ಹಾಕಬೇಕು. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಏನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೇನೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಸಿದ್ದರಾಮಯ್ಯ ಕಾಂಗ್ರೆಸ್ ಸರ್ಕಾರಕ್ಕೆ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಟಿಪ್ಪು ಜಾಗಕ್ಕೆ ಸಿದ್ದರಾಮಯ್ಯ ಬಂದಾಗೆ ನಾನು ಟಿಪ್ಪುನು ಗೌರವಿಸ್ತೇನೆ.
While demonizing Tipu Sultan, the BJP has been pitching Hindutva icon V.D. Savarkar. His poster was unveiled on the opening day of the winter session of the Karnataka Assembly in Belagavi. BJP launched a statewide campaign to raise awareness about Savarkar, and his posters were also splashed across Maidans during Ganesh Chaturthi celebrations in the state. So is this Savarkar versus Tipu narrative about recognition or polarization?
All right. Ashok Gowda is spokesperson of the Karnataka BJP. M. Lakshmana is spokesperson of the Congress in Karnataka. Mr. Gowda, I know Mr. Ashwath Narayan has apologized for his comments, but, what sort of discourse is this that Siddaramaiah should be killed like Tipu Sultan was killed? I mean, is this the level of political campaigning that's going to be seen in Karnataka?
See, Zach, what has happened is, what he meant to say is, the philosophy is what Tipu Sultan believed in destroying everybody for the sake of power. The same philosophy Siddaramaiah also believes. And Siddaramaiah's narrative has also been saying that what may so ever come. He was a divider when he was in power. He divided Lingayat and Veerashaivas. He divided Vakkaligas among the subcastes and subgroups of Vakkaligas. He divided classrooms in the name of, the 2 eggs were given to the most backward classes and 1 egg was given to the backward classes. And like this, whether it was a trip or anything, he has been a divider throughout his regime. Same thing was followed by Tipu Sultan also. He was dividing and he was trying to convert everybody. And there are lots of facts and historical records. And we have already
fair
produced
enough,
lot
but
of them
you can
across
say,
the
okay,
media,
we
and
don't
have
believe in
given
the
evidence.
divisive politics of Siddaramaiah, but to say that he should be killed like Tipu Sultan,
No.
and I say,
He
I
meant
say
to-
Mr. Ashwath Narayan has apologized for it, but does the apology cut it?
No, what he meant to say is the philosophy is what has to be done. What Siddaramaiah believes has to be destroyed, not then by
Okay.
slip of tongue, whatever was said, he has already withdrawn and the statement has been there. And we
Miss-
also should think that
Okay.
why was Rani Abbakka not given importance? Why was Rani Kitturi Channamma not given importance? And why was Madakari Nayaka not given importance when compared to Tipu Sultan? All these were the people
Okay,
who
so
have
let me
contributed
ask
to the
Mr.
Karnataka
Lakshmana of
state
the
immensely.
Congress, Rani Abbakka, Kittur Rani Chinnamma, none of these people who are icons of Karnataka were given importance when Siddaramaiah was Chief Minister. You only did one Tipu Jayanti. So the BJP is saying that this exposes your politics.
No, it's very unfortunate part of Karnataka. It never happened in the history of Karnataka. It is very shame on the part of us. We are all from Kannadigas, Karnataka people, 6.5 crore people, It's very difficult. It never happened. A former deputy chief minister and present minister who is having 4 portfolios, he gives open call to the BJP workers to go and kill Siddaramaiah like how Tipu Sultan was killed. There again, an internal agenda which is being set by this Ashwath Narayan, that too particularly this statement he has made on Mandya district, that is completely dominated by Vakkaliga community. That Gaudas, yes, pronounce 2 names of this Gauda, like Uri Gauda and Nanje Gauda. They have killed Tipu Sultan. Tipu Sultan was not killed by these Gaudas. It's very unfortunate. That is where they wanted to bring this divisive politics into
No, he's
play.
apologized for it. So let's move on. Mr. Lakshmana, Dr. Ashwath Narayan has apologized for it, saying that I didn't mean to say that Siddaramaiah should be killed. But the political choice. Let's talk about the larger framing that the BJP is doing. The BJP is saying that you guys are followers of Tipu and they are followers of Savarkar, and people of Karnataka should choose.
No. This is one thing I want to make it clear before your channel. Ashwath Narayana has not apologized. He has felt it sorry. He said he has made it very clear that I am not going to apologize. I feel sorry for the statement which is being turned around by media. That is what he has said. Not tendered apology. Please.
Okay. Let's answer the larger question I'm asking you. The larger framing. The BJP is framing, Mr. Lakshmana, the BJP is framing, is he there? All right, we'll try and go back to Mr. Lakshmana in a moment. Let me go back to, okay, Mr. Lakshmana, the BJP is framing the fight for Karnataka as a fight between the followers of Tipu, which is you guys, the Congress party, and the followers of Savarkar.
Yes, it's very unfair because the BJP doesn't have anything to say before the public. They have, for the last 4 years, they have looted the treasury of Karnataka, 40% these corruption issues which are there, which everybody is speaking nowadays in Karnataka. Even in the villages, you could see how this state of Karnataka position. Okay. That is the reason, these people have now set the agenda before the people and
Mr.
media.
Ashok Gowda,
debate
Tipu Sultan lived and died 200-300 years ago. Savarkar lived and died 100 years ago. What relevance does it have to the people of Karnataka in 2023? Is this the most important issue in this election? Your state party president says don't talk about roads or drains, talk about love jihad. Are these the issues that people of Karnataka should care about, Mr. Gowda?
No. Zach, what has
Mr.
happened
Gowda,
is,
Mr. Gowda, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. What has happened is in the past we have seen whether it was in 60s, 70s, or even in 2010, 2013 to 18 regime, the Rani Abbakka was forgotten, Kitturu Rani Channamma was forgotten, Madakari Nayaka was forgotten, as well as Kempegowda was forgotten. The only highlight was Tipu. And that is the regime of Congress, and Congress thinks about polarization and appeasement. And we are thinking about everyday development. Forget about anybody else. We are focused, our government is focused on the development agendas. When it comes to the party and party ideology, we are focused on the nationalist ideology, and where we believe that every person who has contributed to this country, whether in history or in today context, has to be given the equal importance.
No, sir. So why don't you go back to the people of Karnataka, Mr. Gowda, give me 10 seconds. Why don't you go to the people of Karnataka and say, okay, we've built a new Terminal 2 at Bangalore Airport. We have decongested the city. We have brought the new light combat helicopter. The Prime Minister was there. We brought the G20. We brought the Global Investors Summit. These are the issues that you should go back to the people of Karnataka with. Not whether Siddaramaiah is Tipu follower or you guys are Savarkar followers. What relevance does that have to the people of Karnataka?
Let's say definitely we are definitely doing that, and as well as Lakshmanji, see even on the national channel, Lakshmanji is trying to lie. Whereas I personally have done a research that Doddanjay Gowda and Uri Gowda are the people who have killed Tipu Sultan, and why should it not be brought to the light? And why should we not tell the fact to the people of Karnataka?
Okay.
And this is the false propaganda which always says that, because the Vakkaliga vote will be consolidated towards BJP because of the bringing the facts towards the Karnataka people. And that is why Lakshmanji is saying that
Mr. Lakshman, final word. I have 1 minute to wrap up. Quickly, please. Mr. Lakshman, yeah.
No.
Respond.
See, I fully agree with you, sir. These BJP people, they have not done anything at all. See, for example, you take an example of Bangalore City. Bangalore City people have submitted to the court saying that there are 22,500 potholes are existence in the city, and people are dying with the traffic. They are not worried about all these things at all. Infrastructure issues or corruption issues. They don't want. They want only trivial issues.
But how was infrastructure any better when you are in power? Or how was traffic any better when you were in power, sir? Mr. Lakshman, 2013 to 18 also Bangalore traffic was this bad.
We have done better. It's not like this worst. It is not like this worst. Bangalore was built by Congress party. Please understand the way how now.
No. It may have been good during SM Krishna's time 20 years ago. Even he's not with the Congress party anymore.
Yes.
But it's not like it was any better when Siddaramaiah was Chief Minister between 2013 and 2018. Bangalore traffic was still as bad.
We have done a lot of things for Bangalore when Siddaramaiah was Chief. So many examples, so many works which will show you.
I got to wrap up. My time is up. Thank you very much, Ashok Gowda, Mr. Lakshmana. It's going to be a fascinating election this in Karnataka. And it's a real pity that historical figures and historical issues are becoming the sort of leitmotif of this campaign. It shouldn't. It should be about daily bread and butter issues. We'll see how this campaign for Karnataka unfolds. Thanks very much for tuning in. Good night.
The oceans in a free, open and in compliance with the rule of law and so on. So that is what we try to achieve, and it is something which cannot be achieved just by one navy alone. It has to be done in cooperation and collaboration as well as coordination with all the navies in the region. So we have our outreach program, we have our activities along with the friendly foreign countries in the region. We help them, we interact with them, we train them, we facilitate capacity building, we strengthen their hands, we have multilateral exercises, all that goes on.
Also about the future plans of Indian Navy.
Future plans, we have a capability development program which takes into consideration what are the challenges that you are likely to face, and based upon that I can tell you that we already have 43 ships under construction, out of which 41 are being built in Indian shipyards only, and we have nearly 49 ships. The AON is being processed, and so by about 2035 or so, we anticipate that we'll be about 170 to 175 ship navy, which will be quite capable of meeting the challenges that we are likely to face.
Our correspondent Akash Sharma, who spoke to the Indian Navy chief, is joining us. Akash, what is the current situation in the Indian Ocean region?
You see, Indian Ocean region, as Admiral R. Harikumar mentioned, is a challenging, facing challenging situations because, other than the resident forces, it also has 60 to 70 other naval forces. But, talking about this particular interview, Anjali, so, Admiral R. Harikumar mentioned a number of important points. And the first one was that he emphasized on the importance of maintaining peace and stability in the region. Since India is a resident force there, so we keep a track of almost all activities. And he mentioned it categorically that, there is a presence of Chinese naval ships, warships, research vessels, and fishing boats as well. So it was an important point. Other than that, we talk about Atmanirbharta. We know that how Indian government is stressing on Atmanirbharta, and in that context, Admiral R. Harikumar, said this categorically that we are at this point in time, building at least 43 ships, and other than these 43 ships, we are also, in process of signing the AON, which is the acceptance of necessity of 49 other ships. And, going with that statement, by 2035, we'll be having at least 170 to 179 ships. This is what he mentioned. So this was the other important point. So first one is, of course, the peace and, peace and stability in the Indian Ocean region that Indian Navy is focusing on. And the other one is Atmanirbharta. And, going with that program, we are also already building ships and all other things in India.
Right, Akash. Thank you for giving us all those details. Indian Navy Chief Admiral Radhakrishnan Harikumar spoke exclusively to CNN News 18's Akash Sharma about the current challenges and preparedness of Indian Navy in Indian Ocean region. The Admiral emphasized on the importance of maintaining peace and stability in the region, which is crucial for the global economy due to the large amount of traffic passing through it. He also mentioned how there is a presence of a large number of Chinese naval ships, warships, research vessels and fishing boats in the region, and how India, being a resident force, keeps a track of all the activity happening in that particular region. Regarding future plans, he revealed that the Indian Navy has a capabilities development program running and 43 ships are currently under construction, with 41 being built in Indian shipyards. Let's listen into this exclusive interview.
Is about Indian Ocean region. We know about the challenges there. China is trying to dominate the area. If you can throw some light on those challenges and also the future plans of Indian Navy.
The Indian Ocean is a very complex area because there is it's very important for almost the entire world because so much of traffic flows through it, maritime traffic. There is trade which flows through the region. It is important not only for us, it's important for the rest of the world as well. So therefore, while we are the largest navy, resident navy in the region, we have to ensure that there is peace and stability because the oceans are the global commons. At any point of time, there are about 65 to 70 extra regional navies operating in this region. So it's our we as the resident naval power in this region, we keep track of all the activities that are happening. There are Chinese naval ships also operating. There are Chinese warships. There are Chinese research vessels, Chinese fishing boats in large numbers, and the prosperity at sea is dependent upon peace, tranquility, our ability to use the oceans in a free, open, and in compliance with the rule of law and so on. So that is what we try to achieve, and it is something which cannot be achieved just by one navy alone. It has to be done in cooperation and collaboration as well as coordination with all the navies in the region. So we have our outreach program, we have our activities along with the friendly foreign countries in the region. We help them.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Balloons refuse to exit the headlines. The latest ones came from Russia. Europeans are scrambling jets. Ukraine says it's a distraction. But here's what Europe doesn't want to talk about. How much nuclear